There's a lot of optimism surrounding the Los Angeles Clippers ahead of the new season. Kawhi's back, the roster looks deep, and they've got the opportunity of putting things right after an underwhelming season. They'll be hoping to keep Paul George fit ahead of the new campaign, but they still seem to be one player short of challenging for the NBA championship. Let's take a look at who that player could be. First up, imagine if the Clippers sign Carmelo Anthony. For us, the Clippers are definitely a player short despite having incredible depth in their roster. And it's a no-brainer because there's a player perfectly capable of coming into the side and addressing their needs. Yes, we're talking about Carmelo Anthony, and we'd love to be proven wrong. But is there a better signing the Clippers could make over someone like Melo? Definitely not, at least not in this offseason, and not one which would be this cheap and convenient. Anthony's a free agent, and it wouldn't even take a lot to convince him. He's already spent the last year in LA, and you don't need a reason to spend another year in a place like Los Angeles. And when you take a look at why the Clippers should be interested in signing him, you realize that he fits their system like a glove. Every team in the league, bar the Warriors maybe, needs a player who can score points for fun, and the Clippers aren't any different. They'll be looking to ease in Kawhi Leonard rather than hoping he takes up the responsibility from the get-go, and one way to do it is by signing Melo. And as far as this remains a hypothetical scenario, you can't stop us from imagining how good that trio would work. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Carmelo Anthony. And the opportunity of piling on further misery for their city rivals, the Lakers. Next, is it possible for the Clippers to sign Melo? The LA Clippers have been long-term admirers of Anthony. Their interest began back in 2011 when the franchise wanted to bring him in. 11 years later, the Clippers still want him. In fact, they even tried to sign him in 2018, but we think this might just be the only time they could realistically sign him. Ultimately, to sign Melo, the Clippers would need to have a genuine interest in him. So far, it doesn't seem like they're considering a move. So we can't say he'll end up playing in LA. There's a much better chance he's playing in LA for the Lakers instead. More on that later. Plus, it'll also need to be a tempting offer. That's because Melo's set for his 20th season in the NBA, and he's seen it all. What he desperately wants is a ring, and he definitely got the credentials of helping out a team like the Clippers chase one. It'd be a proper marriage of convenience for both sides. But will it actually happen? We can't say for sure. So, where's Anthony most likely to end up playing? As of now, our best bet would be on Carmelo Anthony returning to the Lakers before the start of the next season. It's not just us who believe this because apparently a prominent NBA GM has the same view, and he wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers do offer him another short-term contract. And Anthony wouldn't be opposed to a move either because he enjoyed being the Lakers' best shooter last season. Not that he had much competition in that department, and that particular weakness hasn't been addressed just yet. We think Melo would love to be back to the Lakers, after he revealed last year that he had no plans of retiring anytime soon. He wants to play a couple of years, but not until his son is playing in the league too, which means we should see him in action for 2 years at least. But the Lakers aren't the only side linked with a move, as the Miami Heat have also expressed an interest in acquiring his services. They lost Tucker, and while Melo wouldn't plug the defensive vulnerability of losing someone like Tucker, he can still do a decent job offensively, so we can see why they're interested. Along with the Lakers and the Heat, the New York Knicks probably seem like the most dream outcome for a move. The perfect homecoming. A quartet of Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and probably Donovan Mitchell too, could be an extremely tempting possibility for Melo, as it gives him the best chance of landing a ring. We're not saying the Knicks are the favorites, but they'll be up there, especially if they can get in Mitchell. And retirement's definitely off the table. While his next landing spot is something of a Russian roulette at this point, one thing we can say for sure is that Carmelo Anthony won't be retiring just yet. We already mentioned how he wants to play for a while more, and after the kind of season he had with the Lakers, we can see why he thinks he can offer a lot to any team he goes to. You don't put up numbers like those ones he did for the Lakers at 38 and remain without a franchise. He played a staggering 69 games, averaging around 26 minutes, and came up with around 13 points on average and 4 rebounds per game with incredible shooting of 44.1%. Now, go through that again and tell us that he's done? That kind of shooting deserves another year, even 2, because he's been looking super good in the offseason too. In other other news. First up, Rose's dig at Melo. Carmelo Anthony and Derrick Rose have one of the most fractured relationships in the NBA. It's majorly because of their failed partnership during their time with the Knicks, and Rose has been throwing a lot of shade in the last few years on Melo and blames him for their partnership not working out. Rose explained how Melo had been a great person but lacked winning mentality and versatility as a leader. It seems that all these years later, Rose hasn't forgiven Melo for the performances and looks back on that time with a lot of regret. Despite all this, Rose was full of praise for Anthony's personality and said that he was a great person to be with. But as a player, he just didn't do enough. And that's mainly the reason behind the dismal season, which ended with a 32-50 record. Along with blaming Melo, Rose also pointed out how the triangle implemented by Phil Jackson was useless and didn't help unlock the true potential of the duo. At this point, it feels like Rose would blame anyone other than himself. Next up, Carmelo won't be joining the champions. While his future still remains unclear, there's a decent chance that Carmelo Anthony won't be joining the Warriors this year. So that's one of the 30 possible landing spots that we can cross out. The unrestricted free agent was rumored to be on the Warriors' wish list, but as it stands, the Warriors aren't expecting to make a move and seem happy with their offensive options. Although they've gotten rid of multiple players and they usually use the free agency pretty well, so it's a bit weird to see them not pursuing someone like Anthony, who was so good for the Lakers last year. A lot depends on what the Warriors do with Andre Iguodala as well. If he does play, then it's more than a certainty that they won't be signing Carmelo. But if Iguodala leaves, the Warriors might be tempted in making a late move for Anthony. Lastly, Anthony not the only free agent available. Carmelo Anthony isn't the only free agent still remaining in the market. There are some fantastic names still available. And here are some of the best names that your team could buy to improve their side before the start of the new season. A player the Clippers would be very much familiar with, Montrezl Harrell, is still on the market, and while his production isn't what it was 2 years ago, Harrell is only 28. With the right kind of support, he could become a fantastic signing. But that's the thing, who will make the brave call and give him a chance? Eric Bledsoe, a lot like Melo, is one of the top veterans available in the offseason. If your team needs some depth in the point guard position, it would be a no-brainer to go all out for Bledsoe. He's always been a solid defender, and he can still do a decent job applying the pressure whenever needed. A career average of just under 14 points and 4.7 assists is very healthy too. DeMarcus Cousins is a fascinating option. The former All-Star was a decent player for the Kings and the Pelicans, and he's definitely past his best now. But he's still got a lot to give, as the Nuggets learned when he came up with his career best figures of most rebounds per 36 minutes. If some teams to bolster their front court options, then they should be going all out for Cousins. That's a wrap for this video. Where do you think Carmelo Anthony will end up playing before the start of the new season? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.